It all had begun with an idea. Perhaps this thing is very enticing to say, but it's the truth. The reality is that you need to have a grander vision. Because if you don't think big, the question is, how will you go through those steps to see whether you have that potential or not? What I want you to focus on is thinking big allows you to go through those steps that are needed for you to achieve your vision. If you don't set the bar according to what you deeply feel, how would you go through those steps? When I first decided that I was gonna write a novel, the premise was to write a novel. I didn't start with writing a blog or essays or anything else. Naturally, I did indulge in these things, but in the back of my mind, I kept on thinking about writing a novel. Now, I think this is the perfect time I give you guys some context. After I completed my school, I couldn't get into any colleges. My overall percentage was very low. 5 years prior to it, I didn't know English. I think it's safe to say that I was a pretty below average guy in school. And it was crazy to think when I wasn't getting into any colleges that I was thinking of writing a novel, and that too science fiction. So, how it all started. It was hard enough for me to get a college, as I mentioned earlier, but somehow I ended up getting one. But before that point, I was lost. I was lost even though I had many ideas inside of me that I wanted to manifest. I was so lost that I felt worthlessness, physically, mentally, emotionally, and perhaps spiritually. So when I got into college, I immediately knew that I cannot live this scripted life, meaning going to school, attending a university, doing internships, and then getting on that path of doing jobs after jobs and gaining experience. I didn't believe in these things. To put in simple terms, I wasn't, or I didn't want to do a 9 to 5 job. Also, I always thought, you know, imagine a tent. If that tent consists of your school, your college, your job life, and your life in general, what's outside that tent? If that tent was my universe, I wanted to flick its curtains to see the real universe. Besides, my graduation consisted of 3 years. As my writing sucked, this piqued my curiosity to learn. I would learn a lot of new words. Vocabulary was my thing, and also I was very foolish. I was thinking to myself that I'm gonna write the best novel without reading any books. This also means that I didn't read books and I wanted to write one. I was around 18 and 19 at that time. Perhaps this thought had also emerged because I felt I was in agony, because I had this realization that no one was there to support me, no one was there to realize what I was feeling deep within. And that was good, because at the end of the day, you have to build your foundation. No one else will do it for you. And not reading books was a colossal mistake. But coming back to the time after completing school and entering my college life, deep within, again, there was a void inside of me. It didn't leave just yet. Perhaps this goes back to my time in high school. I was labeled as a below average student, but what I didn't realize was that I could improve. Instead of improving, I chose to accept what the outer environment was telling me, directly or subliminally. That was my default mode. I never questioned that default mode, even if my inner voice was begging me to. And that inner voice, that signal, it's very abstract, meaning it's not direct, but it's obvious. I believe that these callings need to be looked upon, because perhaps they can be the base for those abstract principles that gets evoked within you, mostly helping you to realize the importance of delaying gratification and doing the hard work that is required. I never explored those abstract principles. Instead, I indulged in bad habits. My parents were quite overprotective, and quite frankly, most Indian parents are. But to follow your hero's journey, you need to recognize your hell and heaven within you. Also, I'm referring to that book, Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. And to get out of your nutshell, you need to make that choice to get out and experience the real world. As said, I was in bad habits. It was following the rhythm of that mundane life. I would eat whatever I like, and whenever I wanted. I would think about what others think of me, suffering in my imagination more than in reality. I would sleep late and wake up late. As far as studies went, I studied for the sake of exams. There was no concentration or focus. Life was like this lame procrastination period where you think that you're doing something, but deep inside you know that you're doing nothing. You're just following what you have been told, which is to get good grades and be career oriented so that your future can be better. To wrap up this style of life, it was bound by more short term gratification for me of every kind rather than any delayed gratification. Hence, I was in a void, and this is what I mean by the void. I was living, but my soul was clutched by these invisible tentacles, meaning wrong habits, that even though I was living, I couldn't see clearly. I couldn't feel what was within me, if that makes sense. I knew I could move my body and could think, but there wasn't any meaning. Life was and felt meaningless. I was getting fat. My mindset was broken, and my soul felt shattered. I would react to everything. This would lead to a flurry of thoughts. Those flurry of thoughts would lead to no productivity, but just stress. My emotions were everywhere. That's how you feel, directionless, I guess. Perhaps that's also one way to put if you are depressed. Plus, I was in a school where everybody spoke in English except me, but I was picking it up. At least I tried, but failed many times. The only path that was laid out career-wise was through passing school and getting a degree later on to get a job. But I thought, what about life? I really valued freedom, and in that meaningfulness, I just didn't know how to add that. I didn't know all the steps. Also, again, it was crazy enough to think that I had convinced myself that I was going to write a book. And why did I think that I was going to pursue this endeavor? The reality was, let's just say, my inner voice popped up with this answer involuntarily, that you are a human being. No matter which region you are born in, no matter in which condition your upbringing was done, as a human being, you can always learn. No matter how much you are unskilled, if you're willing to learn and practice, there's always a new road that you can travel, not one but many. From my 8th grade to me completing my school, I did learn some English, but the majority of what I learned came from watching films. I absorbed more through films than a school, actually. Films made me feel better. And when my when my college had begun, I tried writing a short story, thinking that let me finish this first. And if some of my friends liked it, and some of them indeed liked my story, and so I told myself that if they would like my story, I would expand upon this short story. I ended up writing a few of my friends, you know, uh, you know, began telling me that you should keep on doing this, and I kept on doing this. Then our period would start where I would write every day, and then I would pause and won't write for a few days. This back and forth was too much, but I kept this insistence that I have to write, and that writing would help me develop, and that it won't matter even if I fail. In this period, writing also began to aid my emotional well-being. That part was quite damaged previously. Writing kind of allowed me to vent. It later on also made me realize how journaling is important. Writing your thoughts is a powerful tool that often gets underestimated. If something's bothering you, write that down. It won't solve everything until you take real action, but writing it down would definitely help you. So coming back to expanding my short story, a point came in my life that I stopped telling a few of my friends that I was expanding my story. At this point, I felt like I was bothering them, but I continued to keep moving forward. That phase of writing some days and not writing at all would occur. I started looking at my days like you look at a calendar. You tick mark the days where you perform and you put a cross where you don't. So, in short, and also in life, I began to put efforts into making the days where I perform and putting a cross where I didn't. I think the more you put arrows or tick marks and concentrate on making your day productive, I think this is where real consistency develops. You also need to have self-compassion when a day arrives when you halt. Don't let that day become many days, but also don't get discouraged when that happens. A smooth tide doesn't make good sailors. A smooth tide doesn't make good sailors. Keep that in mind. Going back to my short story, and the reason I'm saying it a short story all this time also has a reason. If your goal is to reach Everest, you can't just say that I'm seeing that 26 mile journey, for example. Seeing the peak of seeing the peak of Everest is like neglecting the first 3 steps that will get you there. So adding on to my short story was like me seeing the first 3 steps and then the next first 3 steps, if that makes sense. And in this way, I ended up writing around 55,000 words in the span of 2 years of my college. My story didn't have any chapters, as my first short story began with a dystopian idea of an individual going through some events only to realize that everything was happening inside his mind because he was in a coma. That was my base. I was developing in the process. As I didn't read books and was learning vocabulary, my novel had that reflection. It was terrible. But the reason I say this is because I ended up self-publishing my ebook on Amazon. The name of the book was Cold Time, Assimilation Blunder. Before it was My Dubious Mind. That was the title. Also, and somehow, even though my novel sucked, I believed in the concept so much that I ended up entering a competition. Also, I didn't know my novel sucked until I came in the top 5 of that competition conducted by Amazon. I was close to signing a contract with a very good publisher if I had ended up winning. The criteria to get into the top 5 was to sell as many copies of the ebook and get as many reviews. I ended up going to malls to sell my ebook and get as many reviews. I ended up, some people didn't like my book. Some people loved the concept, and overall, the reaction was very mixed. I even kept the ebook as free of cost for one day because I was close to the competition. One thing was sure, as an introvert, I ended up becoming quite ambivalent. And there's a weird thing that happened. Most of the strangers were nice to me. They did more for my book than my actual friends and relatives. A very few of my close friends never bought the book. Soon they ended up leaving. But coming back to the competition, the judges ended up deciding the winner by the quality of the book, which my book had none except the concept. So what happened next? I didn't feel sad, and I didn't give up on my novel. I just now called it the first draft. And now I think it's important for me to tell the things that I ended up doing in this phase, from beginning to write my book to entering a competition and not winning it, which was good. I was also shedding a lot of weight. because I had put a lot of weight, and I was always overweight during my high school, not bloated up, but more than skinny fat, if that makes sense. But from my 10th grade to the starting of my college, I had gained a lot of more weight, as in more chubbiness. I ended up joining a gym. It's not that previously I didn't join it, but this time I felt like I had nothing to lose, so I just accepted this journey that no matter what, I'm gonna work out every day. The real college for me was to invest in myself physically, as in exercise, emotionally, as in expressing my internal world through building characters. And this really helped me to think clearly. At least it paved the way, and it paved the way, my way, to have a purpose. Writing was the thing where I felt a sense of having a purpose for the first time. This a sense felt very pure, and it began to dissolve my voice, those invisible tentacles, what people think of you in the past, and how you let that take over you. Such things clutch your soul so that you cannot sprinkle, and that you remain to that default mode of yourself. For you, it can be anything. Think of that. But for me, that past had begun to dissolve with this newfound purpose. It also helped me with that melodrama, your day-to-day life that gets indulged with all kinds of gossips around you. I stayed away from this negativity. And, it helped me. It really helped me as I stayed away from this negativity intentionally. And previously I was very unconscious of it, even though I could feel such unwanted miscellaneous things having that unspoken acknowledgement. So take care of yourself. If you are bound by negativity, cut the friends that are harming you. If they are your relatives, maintain your distance. Get rid of that cycle that you know is not enriching your life, and add meaningful things such as journaling, exercising, meditation, reading, good sleep patterns, etc., and eating right, cutting out that processed food. These things were the things I tried adding, and also failed in them in the phase where I had begun writing and ended up calling my novel The First Draft. This is also where the final year of my college had arrived. Word spread out that I had written a novel. Strangely, I was also approached by a publisher. Somehow I even got signed to a contract. Perhaps it was because I had come in the top 5 of that Amazon competition. It just made me think of marketing. That even though my book didn't have that structure, it had a word out. It made an impact. But when I sent my novel for the first editing process, it was crazy. Almost every paragraph had some corrections that the editor had done. I felt sad for the editor because I also had begun to realize the colossal mistake. It was that I didn't read books. And it wasn't like I never read books. I tried, but I didn't really comprehend this English language during my school time completely. I tried but failed, and to be honest, the interest just wasn't there at that time. And during the last year of my college, I was privileged enough to have a Kindle with me, which I got like a souvenir by coming in the top 5 of that Amazon competition. So having that Kindle, where you read ebooks, I ended up downloading different books from different genres, both fiction and non-fiction. And I cursed at myself. That why, that why I had this stupid idea that I'm not going to read any books and that I'm going to write the best book. And the books that I had chosen to read, a few of them were recommended by my friends, and most of them were the books that I have either heard in the movies or just discovered them through random searching. And if I was intrigued by a movie, I would see if that movie was inspired or based on a book. I would end up buying that book. I was introduced to amazing books such as The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, Foundation series by Isaac Asimov, The Alchemist by Paulo, Bleak House by Charles Dickens, Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling, Deep Work by Newport, Meditations by the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, Walden by Henry David Thoreau, etc. I would also read screenplays such as, Interstellar, Arrival, and Iron Man, and the movies that encapsulated me. And there is also still a plethora of authors whose work I need to read and learn from, and that learning is never ending. Reading books made the editing process, how can I put this? Like, the editing process of my book became quite longer with all this learning that I had, that I was doing and that I still do. Basically, I was writing a new book in that editing process. It took me 2 years, and in that period, the first editor had left the job. The new editor that was appointed was fed up that why I was taking too much time, and the blame was on me, not the editor. Before my book could hit the market, Corona came. This is where I made the real progress. I was broke, and I was writing, and I would write in my sister's kitchen because that's where I was stuck, and that's where I found solitude. I began waking up quite early, and I would do my stretching and mobility in the kitchen, and after that I would proceed to do my workout outside the apartment. I had minimum equipment. I used to mix that with body weight exercises, but when I was done with that exercise, I would take a shower, prepare my coffee, and would begin to edit, basically changing 95% of my book. Also in this phase of editing, I would do random things. I would listen to podcasts. For no reason, I would make notes of random podcasts that I would find intriguing. The other thing was that in the third year of my college, which was 2 years ago, before the pandemic hit, I also had started to freelance to basically check my skills. So from the third year of my college to the pandemic, I had become a freelancer. Again, I failed a lot, and I was always on my toes to deliver my clients the best I could. There was love and devotion because I couldn't believe that someone would read and pay for my work. I put this quite easily, but there were a lot of trials and errors, and I also had to face a few cancellations until I adapted that rhythm to give the projects to the best of their needs, to fulfill my clients and give them my best, and that rhythm is and to give them my best. I think that rhythm is learning and developing. When the pandemic came, this is where I got my first big project, which was writing a self-help book. I didn't know whether I could do it, but I did the project with such love and devotion that the client was in love with the book that I had ghostwritten. And it made me think that real learning happens as you do it, because everything is in the present moment. Your art is expressed in the present moment. That's how I think you shape your future. So with that going on, I was also editing my book. When the pandemic ended, I wasn't done with my novel. There was always some dissatisfaction. If my novel was like a canvas, I had erased some lines too many times and recreated the space of the world that I was creating too much and too often. I was like drawing too many times, where you start to feel the crispness of the pages. And anyway, the editor ended up telling me I'm proceeding ahead on whatever I had given him. But I still managed to ask him that let me give you the book the next weekend. That was my ultimatum. And then the process was fast. My publisher, the people working there, the people that I was in contact with, they were really good to me. And the book came out last year. The month was April. My novel's name is Cold Time and Simulation Blunder, and the theme was regarding the World War III with nature. And that's pretty much the theme. There are no lands left, and the world lives in these artificial islands that are protected by walls, and that's the deprivating human condition that that surrounds that world, and the protagonist, you know, he has his hero's journey. So in the start of the video, I talked about of having a bigger goal enough. This is important because if you have a goal that challenges you in every aspect of your being, where you think that you will not be able to do it, that you will not be able to pursue your goal, but if you still pursue that goal because deep inside you, you want to do it, that desire will lead you to those small steps where you will be defeating your small impulses, where you are changing yourself to be a better person. Now, have my book sold 1 million copies? No. Will it ever do? Yes. I don't know the steps, but I'm willing to learn. Practice as many times as I can to polish, and in that process, feel that gratitude and sacrifice. I still have to defeat a lot of demons. One of them is procrastination. Another question would be, did writing change everything for me? Yes, it did. I think it helped me mentally to go through that process of metamorphism. This was boosted by working out, and this might sound weird. I would sit in silence also. This also has helped me tremendously because if you think about it, we are surrounded by distractions. Our attention span is getting stolen by the internet. I'm nowhere near at it. What I mean by that is to get rid of those distractions and embrace the present moment. I'm nowhere near at it. To really see the present moment and feel it, it requires a lot of practice. And in this way, I'm nowhere near at it. And as far as writing is concerned, I believe in my novel. I believe that my novel is great, but I still have to learn because learning is never ending. As a human being, it's your duty to redesign and rebuild yourself every day. Perhaps every day is an opportunity. Every day is a new you. We just die once, but every day we are born again. And I did have my notes, but I had kept some things open-ended, and if you enjoy this, and if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe and hit that bell icon. And I want to keep things unedited, natural, and I think being natural is best. Being yourself is best. Doing mistakes, it's good if you want to improve yourself. So I want to keep that essence in this video. So take care. Love you all.